I don't hear you, Frank.
Yeah, just I'm trying to get it set up. Hang on. Okay, if the controls are not working. Oh, wait a minute.
I see it now.
Okay, you see seminars at sea?
Yep.
Okay, sorry for the delay in getting things going here. As always, there just seems to be technical issues with the webinars, and sometimes it takes a little time to get that straightened out. But thank you for attending. Just a couple of quick words before I bring on Mark as our first speaker. Okay, the program really is sponsored by the PMI Clear Lake Galveston chapter, and they have organized something called Seminars at Sea. And it started about actually 15 years ago. And the whole idea was to combine kind of a vacation with educational programs. So the program is that you leave from Galveston, Texas, on a Carnival Cruise Line ship. It is a 4.5-day cruise leaving on a Thursday afternoon that eventually winds up in Cozumel, Mexico, and there's a day of excursions available for that, and then the return back to Galveston. During the during the cruise, there will be a seminar all day on Friday, approximately from 8 a.m. until 4 p.m. with different speakers. And then Saturday is a day of, like I said, excursions at Cozumel. And then on Sunday, another full day of seminars with a completion party, which is kind of a celebration of the program. And then it returns to Galveston on Monday morning at approximately 8 a.m. We can get anywhere from 16 to 21 PDUs. It is a combination of thought leadership, education, some fun, some networking, and PDUs. And that is really what the program is. Feel free to post questions during the session, and I will moderate the session. My name is Frank Salatis, and I will be hosting and moderating the session here, and we'll get things started very quickly. And this is a quick bit of information about the program. This webinar is also being recorded and will be made available in case anyone wants to visit it and share with other people, colleagues, people that might be interested in the program. All the information is there. April 23rd, 4 p.m., returning April 27th at 8 a.m. The port of call is Cozumel. It's actually a very nice port, lots of interesting things to do there. Like I said, you get 16 plus PDUs. There are evening after dinner sessions to have additional time to network and also discuss the latest topics in project management. It's a very engaging and interactive type of a program. Again, my name is Frank Salatis, PMP, PMI Fellow. And Mark, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself. Mark is an author, a Six Sigma Black Belt, and his topic is mastering the complexities of global project management. So with that, I'm going to actually hand off the program to Mark, and he will now become the presenter. And we will make him the presenter and have him basically introduce himself and address the program. Okay, so give me a minute to do that. Okay, so Mark, you should be a presenter in just a minute and share your screen. And again, introduce yourself, a little background, and then get right into your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, I guess I need to bring up my slides. Okay, Frank, let me know when are they coming up?
Yep, they are coming up.
Okay, great, great. Yeah, my name is Mark Hale, and I am a project manager, a consultant, and lately I've been a an author also. I have a book out, Amusing Confessions of an International Consultant. And basically, what I want to do today is give you some basic information about handling international projects or cross-cultural projects. I want to put this on full screen. Okay, there we go. I want to talk about the cultural aspects of international projects. I know a lot of project managers do have to manage international projects where they go across cultural lines, and I've been, I guess, fortunate and unfortunate enough to work projects in 41 different countries. I've done a lot of international work over my career. Next year, I'm going to hit 50 years as a project manager since I got out of undergraduate school, and I find that that most project managers, if they have not yet dealt with an international project, unless they're an old person like me, they probably will at some time, and it's really necessary. Uh, and I've experienced a lot of project disasters, and in a few cases, the underlying reason was the individuals on the project team and the project manager did not handle the cross-cultural issues well enough, and that caused problems and also failures and disasters. And I find out that the project manager who understands and applies cross-cultural knowledge, they will tend to be um, uh, successful. What I want to cover today, very, very briefly. I really can't cover everything. Hopefully, I will see you on the cruise where I'm going to have a quarter day, a 2.5 hour session where I'm going to go into this with a lot of more detail. But we're going to talk about globalization and how it's changing the role of the project manager, the importance of cross-cultural understanding, and also, I want to just touch on some of the unique things with dealing with other cultures. And we're going to deal with China, which is probably very, very different than our culture. Latin America, a little bit, because a lot of project managers need to deal there. India, if you're in the IT area, there's a good chance you're going to have to deal with India. And we're going to talk about some other issues. Also, I'm going to give you a couple examples of cross-cultural faux pas. There's been a lot of errors made, a lot of problems that I've heard about, and I also have experienced it. And I'll give you some tips, very, very few. Again, I only have 20 minutes here, but some tips on handling cross-cultural savvy on when you're dealing with international projects or cross-cultural projects. It may not be international. You may have people here in North America dealing and that are a different culture, and they've not been totally acclimated to our North American culture. Here is one example. In 2008, I was brought on as a consultant to work a project in Asia. The headquarters of this company was in London, and basically they had a division in an Asian country. It was an English-speaking country. I'd rather not indicate the country, and they had a lot of Chinese suppliers, and they had one major supplier in China. What they were doing was buying kits out of China, assembling it in their country in order to reduce import taxes. And when I finally got there, and I was told before there was a lot of conflict between the two groups, the Chinese suppliers and the other country where they were actually building and assembling and selling the product. There was constant conflict. And there was issues. I was trying to work these issues. I did a lot of. I spent a lot of time training the Chinese on this other culture, but I never really got a chance to spend time with the other country, the mother country that was buying the product, and because I had gotten redeployed to another region in Asia, and I wasn't able to finish the project totally. Plus, some other thing happens. But what was happening, and at the end of 2008, the big world recession hit, and at that time, the company was losing money, and I was pressured to try to negotiate lower prices to the Chinese from the Chinese suppliers because everybody knew that their labor costs were the same, but their material costs dropped. And I kept going back. I kept trying to negotiate a lower price, and I kept getting pushback. I kept getting refusals to lower the kit price. Finally, the person refused to do it, and the manager of the company told me. She told me that the reason was because of all the grief she was getting from my my company over in this other country, and she didn't care if she lost the business. It was a big enough business for her to be concerned, but it wasn't worth all the grief. And most of the reason was due to cultural uh, difficulties, and basically that division had to be sold off at a loss, and it eventually closed down. So a lot of people lost their jobs, and also there was a big loss of money for the investors in this company. It was a new company, and there was a lot of venture capital money involved in it. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about us as North Americans. I think in a lot of cases, and it was the same case with me, we're kind of at a disadvantage because other countries and other individuals in the foreign arena, they tend to understand American culture better than we do. We're a little arrogant. A lot of Americans think that the whole world should think and act like us. We're really not as interested in learning other cultures, but our culture is exported. How we export it through movies, television, and music. Everywhere I've gone in all the over 40 countries that I've been in, I always see a lot of American TV and American movies that are there. So our culture is exported. It's distorted, but it's exported. I'll give you one example. As you probably detected by my accent, I'm originally from New York City. I grew up in Brooklyn. My grandparents were immigrants from Sicily on my mother's side, and I grew up in an Italian American neighborhood. And I was talking to some people in Manila once, and they were looking at each other smiling. And they say, and I asked them, "Why are you smiling? What is so funny about what I'm doing?" She says, "Will you remind me of all those mafia people that we see on television and in the movies." And again, probably my mannerisms, the way I do that, and that's one reason and one example of how our culture is exported. People know about it, but it's a little bit distorted. That's why it's important for both sides of the fence to learn the other culture. Basically, what cultural savvy does for the project manager, it really helps with their success. It aids in communication. You have the communication difficulties because of time zones. If you're dealing with Asia, right now the people in Asia are sleeping, and we're working. And when they're working, we are sleeping. So it's a real challenge with the time zone. And a lot of times you have to rely too much on email communication, which can be a problem. It also that it helps the individual establish rapport with people, and positive relationships are real important. Most third world countries, they are very much interested in, and they do business more on positive relationships and not on some other things that we're going to talk about. It also helps team motivation and buy-in. It helps communication, and in general, when you engage the culture, you understand the culture. of another region that you're dealing with, it really postures you for success. And I find that the once I started in doing all these international projects and all this time I spent overseas, I always did better when I learned the culture and engaged in it. Okay, let's talk China. It's a little bit different in China. One of the big things with the Chinese culture is they don't value the project charter, specifications, laws, uh, regulations like we do. Okay, they think that a contract is basically a guide. You follow it when you can. If you can't follow it, that's okay. If you want to change it, you can change it every week. It's fine, and that causes a lot of problems. And yes, you need a project charter. Yes, you need a specification. Yes, you need a contract. But you really, Americans and North Americans need to spend more time on relationships. They're really vital. Personal space is different. A lot of times getting close to people in other cultures is acceptable. It makes us comfortable in a lot of cases. It is with Chinese. It is with a lot of Asians where they will get closer than we are accustomed to being uh, during business type engagements. Humility. Chinese are taught to be humble, and a lot of North Americans, they like to, especially Americans from the United States, like to brag and boast. That is a problem, and that's something that we need to manage properly. A lot of frustrating things. I find this real frustrating. North Americans are very direct. What we say is what we want. We give very specific answers, but in a lot of other cultures, especially in China, it's indirect communication. A lot of individuals um, communicate indirectly. It's hard sometimes to get a straight answer. There's been times when I was working through an interpreter in China where it took 10 minutes when all I wanted was a yes or no answer. And I kept getting a response back, explanations, and all I was the bottom line. Can you do it? Yes, no, or I don't know. And it took a while because that's not the way they communicate. So that's something that we need to manage. And during the cruise in my session, we'll be dealing with that. Also, here's another thing. In China, a yes a yes could mean something as little as yes, I know your larynx is vibrating and sounds coming out of your mouth. Nothing else. It's not the same as yes, where we would expect if a question is answered and somebody would answer yes, we would say yes, I understand it. Yes, I'm going to be able to do it. You won't get that from Chinese, and you have to deal with that. We're going to talk about it. The other thing is project meetings. You'll find that Asians in general will engage in meetings. It has to do with something called um, Mansi, which is saving face, where they don't want to be embarrassed themselves in public or embarrass you. So getting Chinese to engage during project status meetings is a real problem. And again, I wish I had more time to get into some techniques on dealing with it, but during the cruise, we will dig into that. Here's another funny story. This was in a project management, one of the journals that I read years ago. It was probably 10 years ago, if not longer. But I'll even tell you the company, John Deere, which the color is green of the company. They were opening up a factory in China. And what they normally do in China, it's a big effort. It's a big celebration when a factory opens up in China. There's dignitaries there, the mayors. There's free food for all the townspeople. Everybody comes and they celebrate. The press is there, and because the company was green, they imported all these green baseball caps, and they were giving them out to people. And they found out that they noticed that the uh, the foreigners that were there, they put the hats on. None of the Chinese would put the hats on, and they didn't understand the culture well enough to realize that no one in China will wear a green hat. If you wear a green hat, it means that your spouse or your significant other is cheating on you. So it kind of put a damper on all the festivities, and that's because the the company didn't uh, do enough research, and I think maybe even their Chinese counterparts didn't want to push back because Chinese don't tend to challenge authority, to tell them that wasn't a good idea. Or maybe it could be, this is going to be fun. We're going to let this go and enjoy it. I really don't know. But that's another example of how problems can occur when you don't understand the culture. Let's talk a little bit about India. Here's another story about a project manager that was assigned to an IT project in India. And when he went over to India and had his first meeting with the lead programmer. And this person didn't spend 20 minutes Googling doing business in China, I mean, in India, and he didn't really look around to see when people talk, their mannerisms. And in India, when someone understands what you say and they're agreeing and they're willing to do it, they'll shake their head from side to side. And that's a typical thing in India, and that means that's a positive response. For us, shaking our head means no. And this person was uh, talking to the lead programmer. The lead programmer was shaking his head from side to side. And finally, after the individual was talking, constantly explaining things, and this person is shaking his head, kind of lost it. He had an emotional reaction, stormed out of the conference room, went to the person's boss, and demanded that that person be taken off the project because he has not agreed with one thing that I said. It had a negative effect on the career of the person. He had to be removed from the project. Eventually, he left the company. He was forced to leave the company. The project um, got pushed back in schedule because someone else had to fly out there, had to get a visa, fly out there a week later, and start the project um, again. So the company lost time and money. And there's another example of a faux pas with not understanding the culture. Let's talk a little bit about Latin America. The first thing is there's plenty Spanish-speaking countries in the world. They're not all the same. And a lot of people think that what people eat in Mexico and how people act in Mexico is the same as what people think and act and what their culture is in a country like Argentina. And it's not the same. They're all different. There's different foods, different ways of doing things, and you really shouldn't assume that all culture is the same. The Mexican and Central American is kind of one group of culture. The Caribbean is another. Northern South America is another. The Andes countries is another, and then Chile and Argentina is another different culture. So there's differences. So don't assume they're all the same. When you do your research, do it on the particular country or region you're dealing with. They have a different sense of time. They work just as hard of us, but they don't respond quickly. It's very frustrating for us Americans because we like to get a response back on an email the same day. When I deal with Latin Americans, sometimes it takes 3 days, but things get done. They're more formal. At the beginning, I recommend people call them senor, or senorita, or senora, instead of their first names. And again, they deal with relationship-based type culture, so they want to get to know you better. You really need to work on a personal relationship with them. And the last thing is, if you look at the map, you see the size of Brazil. It's about half the size of South America. They don't speak Spanish; they speak Portuguese, and a lot of Americans just assume, and they learn a little bit of Spanish and say things, and the Brazilians get insulted. So realize that not all of Latin America is Spanish speaking. There's a few English speaking countries, and then the very large country in South America is Portuguese speaking. Okay, a few things before we wrap up. You really need to be careful in the way you talk and the way you write, the way you communicate. Be careful about it. Unless you're old, you don't remember the Chevy Nova, but that used to be a low-end car. back 30 years ago, something like that, I think, maybe even longer. And they tried to market, GM tried to market the Nova in Latin America, and it didn't sell because they didn't realize it. Nobody was smart enough, or nobody did the research to realize that Nova means no go. It doesn't go. So why would you call a car the name of it? It doesn't go. So they had to rename it as the Caribe, and then it started to sell. So realize that very expensive mistake that General Motors made. Uh, you should avoid the use of jargon and colloquialisms. Be careful with that, unless you're dealing with a country that baseball is their sport, like the Dominican Republic. You're gonna confuse people if you use terms like strikeout, home run. So be conscious of what you use. Be careful of those type of jargons that are typical American or North American speech, because that can get one in trouble. The last thing before I wrap things up is cross-cultural training. If you're really dealing with international projects, it's important. I believe that you spend some time and get somebody in to do like a half-day training program, or even a full day, even better, on the particular culture. And also do it for both sides. All team members in both directions. Give your team members that are in other countries or part of another culture, give them some training on American culture, and your team members, give them training. It's a very, very inexpensive. For a couple $1,000s, you get somebody in, and you could do a training program. I can't impress upon individuals more that they should do that. The last thing is, I hope to see you on a cruise. We're really going to deal into to more of these things. And that quote here, it's not right or wrong, good or bad. It's different. As I told you before, my maternal grandparents came here from Sicily, so I grew up in a very much Italian, Southern Italian American environment as a child, and also in New York, and realized that Southern Italians are very opinionated, and also New Yorkers are very opinionated. When you put the two together, you get a very opinionated person. And I came home and I visited my mother on the way home from one of my trips, and I mentioned to her, this is something that happened, that she had a very negative reaction. That's bad. That's horrible. How could they do that? That's wrong. And I kind of thought a minute, and I responded by saying, it's not right or wrong, good or bad. It's just different. So when you're dealing with other cultures, you're going to see things that are strange, that are different, that you haven't seen before, and it may not be good or bad. It's not right or wrong. Just realize you're going to see things that are different. And in all the different cultures that I've actually spent time, literally in the country, with my feet on the ground, I've seen a lot of things, and a lot of things that it's done in other countries actually, I think, are better than what's done here. So our situation or our culture, I don't think, is the best. There's great things to it. I love this country, and I don't regret uh, being an American. But you're going to see different things, and realize that 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 is the case, and accept it and don't judge. Okay, that's about it, Frank. I'll turn it over to you. And again, I hope to see everybody on the cruise. I think you'll enjoy it.
Okay, Mark, before you go, a couple of questions, and
Sure.
also we are having some technical issues with our second speaker, so we may be extending you a little bit, and maybe get some questions and some comments from
Sure.
the audience. I'm going to do a quick check with our second presenter in a second, but you mentioned jargon, slang. What you didn't talk about, maybe you can spend a minute or two, is uh, at least as my understanding, and maybe other people on the call would have this same understanding, that people that are born in the U.S., North America, um, have a concern about personal space. They like to have a little bit of a distance between them and other people, whereas in some other countries, maybe down in South America, Latin America, and maybe in places in Europe, the space is not looked at the same. People do get close. How do you address something like that?
Yeah, the first thing is to research it, to find that out. And the other thing is, if you're going to go over there, just look at how people interact with each other. Yes, Latin America, Southern Europe, people are get very close. They're very tactile. I'll give you an example. I went and did some work in for a supplier to a company, to a client that was up in New Jersey, and I had to go to Mexico City. And what I did was, the first time I was when I first went there, the the or I was introduced to everybody, and they have what they call in all these companies in the front office tacos de ojos. They're tacos of the eye in Spanish. And they're basically young, very good looking women. And these women are hired for a lot of times for what I believe is show. And what happened was I met all these women. The next day, all of them, every one of them embraced me. I got a hug from these women that I didn't even know 24 hours, a big hug and a kiss, an abrazo and a beso. And I was thinking about that, and I know Chinese women because China is the people there. The culture is non-tactile. They, uh, I know Chinese women over 20 years that are good friends. If I were to embrace them in public, they'd fall on the floor and die. Okay, so that's the difference. So you really need to understand that. Also, one region I've not done work in is the Middle East, and I'm told that's another region where people get close. So a lot of times is just uh, stop, look, and listen, see how people act, ask questions about it. I had another Brazilian person tell me once that he's used to when people come to an airport and they haven't seen family members, they're crying and kissing and hugging them. And he went once to Scandinavia, and there were family members there greeting people on the plane, and they would just put their hand up and say hi, and they'd walk away. There'd be no emotional embrace. So hopefully that that helps it. But again, check it out, do the research, and watch.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. See, one of the things that I get a lot of comments on, because I've talked about globalization and so on of project management, but what we do is what we have in the past, and we have emphasized how the folks in the U.S., U.S. employees, people that are born and raised in the U.S. need to adapt to other cultures. And I get some pushback on that occasionally, where people are saying, "Well, wait a minute. How about if they what shouldn't they adapt to our culture?" And my response is, well, we're going to have to, use some good judgment here. I think that everybody has to understand that the world economy, the world business environment has changed quite a bit, and it's far more diverse than it has been in the past history of business. And we do have to be sensitive to cultures, but I think that all cultures need to be sensitive to other cultures and find ways to adapt. What would you say about that?
Yeah, definitely. That's why I said in the slide before, the one that's up there now, that the cross-cultural training should be both ways. Us Americans should get training in whatever culture we're dealing with. And if it's an American company, I think spending some money getting someone in there to train people on the American culture is important, because yes, they do know more about our culture, but it's distorted. And yeah, it goes both ways, and they should also learn our culture, and hopefully we can meet somewhere in the middle.
Okay, now I have a good opportunity here. Our second speaker, we've had some technical issues with, might be able to get online now. And so I'm going to say, Kevin, the mic is open for you. Do you have a question for Mark before we transfer over to your presentation? We're testing to see if we can hear you.
Sure. How does it sound?
Okay, we're good.
Right.
Good. So, Mark, have you ever been to the great state of Texas, a whole different culture?
Yes, all the time. Texas, I love Texas. I don't know what it is, but I think Texas is great. In
I
fact,
appreciate
even
that.
going overseas, I have to tell you another story. I would go and I'd meet a lot of people at hotels, and they would say, "Well, I'm from Sweden, I'm from Canada, I'm from Mexico," and you get an American, "Yeah, I'm an American," and there's a Texan there says, "I'm from Texas." He does it because they don't consider themselves Americans. They're different, you know.
we
So
we are
yeah,
a
so
whole nother
Texas
country,
is.
brother.
Yep, I know it is. Yep, and you used to be one, a separate country.
That's
So
right. All
okay,
right, so Frank, I think I'm ready for the transition. If you'll manage the slides for
Great.
me,
Okay. Well,
I'll
Mark,
lay this down.
great. Okay, Kevin, thanks. Mark, thank you very much. I don't have any questions from the audience at this time. I noticed that the audience is a fairly diverse audience. So I'm going to invite anyone that has a comment about their experiences in dealing in the global project management business environment. If you have any experiences, if you have any recommendations for the people that are on the call here, please post them in the question box or in the chat box, and we'll share them with everyone. In the meantime, I'm going to make a transition here and bring up Kevin to talk a little bit about, I think the topic is lies we believe about work. So just give me
That's
a
right.
chance to make that transition.
Super. I'll catch everybody up. So my name is Kevin Martin, and I've been on a few of these cruises, but I'm also an avid reader. And one of the books in transition with Mark that I recommended was probably 4 or 5 years ago. It's called The Culture Map. It's a global study of the diversity of the cultures, and it really gets into some details that I picked up because I do manage global projects, and the things that you would do to to build affinity with one culture could also cause problems, as Mark highlighted, with other cultures. So one size doesn't fit all, and that's probably true within our own country, but also when you begin to go to the Latin American countries, and Mark highlighted how they're different. And I'm going to talk to you about some other things, things about the lies that we believe at work that modify our behavior. And I want to highlight the things that are changing to make you a more successful leader of global teams, but also your own career and the career of others. So this is a leadership talk. I'll break it down. I only have time to do about 3 of them on this presentation today, but I want to pique your interest and invite you to join me at a future presentation to get the rest of the details. But we'll take an inventory of all 9. And I'm going to highlight, there's a bibliography at the end of my presentation to show you the books that I use to as the foundation for this talk. So I want to give you the opportunity. Any questions before we get started, or comments about the lies you think you believe at work? If you'll drop it into the questions, I can see them. Also, maybe just let Frank know, and we'll get them there. A little promotion on the cruise. I want to say this is my 6th or 7th cruise. I've taken my family, so it's a great family outing. My family had a great time. My wife is prone to motion sickness, even driving in the car, and she has been on a couple of times and is looking forward to attending this one if our schedules can coordinate. All right, I see the slides up. Again, the 9 lies we believe about work, and it's subtitled The Free Thinker's Guide to the Real World. Ready when you are, Frank. So I always ask the question, what is a lie? The definition of a lie, and if you'll go to the next slide, if we were in audience participation, I would get some input from you. If you have some comments, you can put that up. But the second slide says there's a famous quote. Here's what John F. Kennedy had to say about this topic. The great enemy of the truth is very often not a lie, deliberate, contrived, and dishonest, but a myth that is persistent, persuasive, and unrealistic. And I believe that's what I'm going to show you is 9 things that are a myth. They are persistent, they are persuasive, they're unrealistic, and it's because we're taught because we haven't changed our perception. So I'd like to monitor the environment, and let me show you now what I believe are some of those myths. Here's a famous quote that's becoming famous, I should say. All failure is leadership failure, and that was me back in 2015. Anytime I give a leadership talk, I talk about this, and you can imagine when there are leaders in the room, it kind of gets their attention, but I believe I can break that down. I'm going to show you why, if you don't pay attention to these 9, you will be part of not only your team's failure, but potentially your failure. So let's look at those 9 lies. And here they are. So these 9 lies are based upon years and decades of traditional management and career development. Here's the first one. People care about the company that they work for. I'm sure that in the past that was true. Everybody wanted to work for the most well-known company, the largest conglomerates, those kind of things. There was safety in size. We now know that that's not true, and we'll talk about that more. Number 2 was the best company wins. Again, highlighting the fact that the company is where the strength is. You now know that there are companies that were on the Fortune 500 5 years ago, and they don't even exist on that index anymore. Number 3 is the best companies cascade goals. This seems like an appropriate time to talk about this one in the line of performance appraisals. They're either being done now or goals are being set. What the studies show is that's not the case any longer. The best companies don't cascade goals. They cascade something a little differently, and we'll talk about that one. The best people are well-rounded. This comes from, I think, Marcus Buckingham's book, Break All the Rules. Excellent book, probably from about 15 years ago. I think it was the first one that he wrote while he was at Gallup. It really impacted me, and it's on the bibliography, if I'm not mistaken. But this is about, there are things that you just can't be good at. We all have our strengths and we all have our weaknesses. And there was a movement to make everybody best at everything. And what Marcus said was, you just have to realize that there are some things that you're not good at. And when you're part of a team, which is how most work gets done these days, there is somebody else that might be good at that. And if there's not, you might want to look at including that in your skill set. All right, the next one is that people need feedback. This is along the feedback and the performance appraisal line, and that is, I give you feedback on an annual basis in the worst sense, and you get better because of it. The data shows us that's not what people need. People need something slightly different, but it does change the way that they are able to react, and it's also done in a more frequent. There's things like 360 feedbacks. Those are fun if they're done improperly, because it then becomes a popularity contest, and I don't have to outperform you. I just have to outmarket you, because I tell all the good things about me and all the bad things about you. I've seen those systems implemented incorrectly more often than not. People can reliably rate others. This goes again back to how people rate each other, especially in performance reviews. We rank order. If you go back to Jack Welch and the GE Six Sigma, they rank order, and if you're in the bottom 10%, you were let go. If you were in the top 5%, you were performing, and the 85% in the middle is just doing their job. Not really a great motivational. It certainly motivated people based on fear, but it wasn't a great, how can I be better in the next cycle. People have potential. That sounds reasonable, but again, it's a myth. People have momentum. This one I'll talk about on the cruise in detail, but this one has to do with you really have momentum, and people have momentum more than potential. Some people's momentum begins to slow down when they quit learning new things and begin to settle for the status quo. And so we'll talk about how that looks different. People's potential is a perception of pent up energy about to be released, and that's not actually the case. And then number 8 is the work-life balance matters most. While work-life balance is important, that is not what the data shows, and we'll talk about what the reality is. And then the last one is that leader or leadership is a thing you can acquire. That one is also a myth. You can develop it. You are never good at it, but we've all had great leaders. We can name them. Some of us have worked for great leaders. Others have seen great leaders from afar. And so we'll move on and look at number 1 in detail. So this one, lie or myth number 1, I actually call them, I don't know if it's a lie or a myth. I tend to think of them more as myths, because I don't believe people blatantly lie. about people caring about the company that they work for. It's certainly an important item. But what the data shows us, if you'll go to the next slide, is the truth is that people care about the team they work with. And this is substantiated by when messages like people don't leave companies or work, they leave managers and the people around them. When you spend most of your day and your life, if you count the data, and I'll have the data on the cruise, how many minutes per day, if you just do the data and let data drive your feelings to a different point, you spend more time with the people you work with and the people that you actually have in your family. At least some of us professionals do. So if this one, I think, is also something that we need to change and make the team that you work with the most important thing that people care about, and how to build better teams. And I've got lots of information on how to build better teams, having done it serially for more than 10 years. All right, truth, or let's say myth number 2. And I promise to land this plane on time. I might show about 11 minutes. Myth number 2 is that the best plans win. Now, this comes from the fact that it is important to plan. And you can go all the way back, and I think there's lots of quotes around the best plans never survive first contact with the enemy. And that's true, and especially given our rapidly changing technology, rapidly changing availability of information, and rapidly changing expectations of satisfaction. Those things are driving plans that take too long to build to be analysis paralysis victims. What we found, the truth around this is, if you'll slide to the next one, that it is around information. The person with the best intelligence wins. So if I can take data from feedback, from team, from customer, that's why you see so many surveys being done. You can't go anywhere now without answering a survey about how satisfied I was. Sometimes when I'm driving, I don't know about you, but I give people surveys they didn't even ask for. At least we do that in Texas. So intelligence wins. So the truth is that intelligence and your ability to take information from a variety of sources, process it, and turn it into usable trends and information is the company or the group that wins in the new economy. All right, myth or lie number 3, that the best companies cascade goals. Now, it is super important for you to understand your company's mission statement, your vision, your why. If you've listened to anything around Simon Sinek and his Start With Why, which is a popular movement, we'll talk about that on the cruise. He tells you that the how you do things and why you do things are important, but your reason for being and your simple statement around why you do what you do is what motivates and synthesizes the people who are on your team, who are in your company, who are in your enterprise. The more global you are, the more synthesis points you need to coordinate. And so here's the truth around myth number 3. The next slide. I think, so I left that one off. Let me tell you the story, and then we'll move on to the other lies. So again, the best companies cascade goals is not true. That used to be true because we were all around strategic planning. The world moved slower and we could adapt to it. The truth now is it's around meaning. Why do we do what we do, and how does each individual contribute to the information source, the feedback, the quality, the deliverables? Every person needs to feel part of meaning. So the best companies cascade meaning, and each department then cascades their individual meaning, and then you can see it as a collective. And I think that's a significant change in the way companies communicate their value, their engagement of their customers, their satisfaction. A number of items are now wrapped around why do we do what we do, and why do we care, and what each individual does is part of the collective. All right, so the other, if you go to the next slide, the other 6 are wrapped around people, what people do and what people believe. The ones that I just highlighted were all around company. The remaining 6 are around people, which are 4, 5, and 6, and then leadership, what leadership believes, which is 7, 8, and 9. So not having enough time on this to go through them all, I wanted to highlight the lies and at least get you to take inventory on what lies you may fall prey to, and where we might discuss more what you can do better if you knew that they were a myth or a lie. All right, and then I think I have the next slide is, this is my motivation to you. Why are we doing this? We're doing this presentation to give you education and also give you an opportunity to think and get better. So the greatest risk is to behave or to believe the 9 lies that we just talked about. And your ability to think freely and embrace the future, to inform yourself, inspire others, and encourage other leaders is your greatest contribution going forward. And that's what I'm here to do today and what we'll do on the cruise. If you'll slide one more, again, there's that famous quote. I hope you'll use it. All failure is leadership failure. Be ready for some blowback because you're going to have to justify it. But I want you to be the best and most courageous you today. And I want you to start addressing these lies that we believe and begin to seek the truth. So I hope you'll join me on the cruise for the rest of the story. If not, connect with me. The bibliography and more reading is listed there. There's a number of books. I'm a voracious reader, and so I hope you'll begin reading too, if I can help you in any way. I think the next one is my goodbye slide. Yeah, that's how you get in touch with me. So I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter, and you can email me at different places. So let me know how you're doing. Let me know what you're struggling with, because we're here to help you be better. And with that, I'm going to give 5 minutes back for questions, or back to Frank. Back to you, Frank.
Okay, so let me just check and see if there's any questions out there. Okay, there's always this one question that comes up. How are PDUs going to be credited? And I will bring up the information on that shortly. Before I do that, I want to go back to Kevin a little bit. First of all, I've seen some of Simon Sinek's TED TV programs, and that's definitely something you want to look at. He's a real, has a lot of insight when it comes to leadership. The thing of leader is a thing, Kevin. Can you explain what that means? Why were people saying that or believing that? What does that mean? Leader is a thing.
Yeah, so that it's centered around a myth that if you're identified as a leader, that makes you one, and we all know that's not true. We've seen bad ones, throughout history. I'm a great student of history, and there's people who lead people astray. It's also something that you're anointed with, and it's not. Leadership is based upon trust and based upon your ability to influence others and your ability to continue to evolve. Once you get to be a leader, the bad news is you got to keep practicing to stay one. Many times people are put in leadership positions and fail miserably because they think it's a thing that's been gifted to them, and it's a position. It's not. Leadership is centered around trust, and when trust is lost, you have no followers, and without followers, you are not a leader. I think someone wrote one time, if you don't have any followers, you're just on a long walk all by yourself and don't know it.
One other thing, and this is something that I know from other readings and so on, and maybe you can comment on this. About 80% of the people in an organization actually carry the organization. In other words, they do their job and get things done. However, research studies indicate that the top and bottom 10% are getting the most attention from their managers and their executives. What are your comments about that? 80% of the people getting most of the work done to carry the organization, but management gives most of their attention to the people who are less performing and the people who are the high performers. Any suggestions on how organizations might change that?
Yeah, I agree. It comes from a concept of management by exception. So if you're having an issue, you're either an issue where someone's high performing and making a lot of waves. You spend time promoting that person, talking about that person, coaching that person. The bottom group, you spend more of your time managing their behaviors, trying to get them to be better. It's that middle group, and I don't know if it's 80, but it's probably close to that, where they're doing their job and you give them a push of the flywheel every now and then. One of the things I loved about Marcus Buckingham's book, and he has many that I haven't even listed, there's a great book called Stand Out that I just bought for my entire team, 30 copies. It looks at how it puts you in a scenario and asks you how would you respond, and then it gives you a score on how they would perceive your leadership. It's a really interesting book. It's not a personality test. It's a how would you react in this scenario, and then how would people perceive your reaction as a leader. It's an excellent book. But here's what I tell people on leadership all the time. When you get a leadership title, you're on 24/7. They're watching you at the grocery store. They're watching you on the freeway. They're watching you at the sports games. They watch how you act in every situation, because our brains are trying to say, should I trust this person or not? Those folks that are getting the job done in the middle are the key to the company, but we manage by exception, and that's just that's the way we as humans tend to allocate our time. It's either in the over exceeding performing people or the underperforming where we're trying to correct, and that's got to change over time, and I have some ideas about how to do that.
Okay, one more thing, and I know you're an avid reader, lots of books. One of my favorite books is The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, and you had mentioned a little bit earlier that we can't be good at everything. And you know, in the project management world, we try to get project managers to be almost everything. You know, if you look at all the knowledge areas in the PMI's PMBOK, and you have to be a good leader, you got to be a listener, you got to be a communicator, you got to understand some technology, you have to be able to solve problems, you have to be emotionally intelligent. You know,
Right.
we can't do everything, but we have to do some things. Any suggestions on what those things are that project managers should really focus on? We can't, like I said, we can't be the technical expert and manage the project at the same time. What would you suggest that project managers should focus on?
So we're all different. We're all wired different. Some people are very detail oriented. Some people are big picture oriented. What I would tell you in very short time, because I know we're at our ending point, is take a personal inventory of yourself. Tell yourself the truth. I'm either good at this or I'm not good at this. And then decide, are you going to try to be better by improving, by practicing, by reading books, by doing something? Or are you going to accept the fact that you're okay with your weaknesses? And that probably is the very first thing when we talk about truth telling. And you'll hear this in Brene Brown's books on becoming vulnerable. You see, if you open your weaknesses, that sometimes is seen as a weakness. I believe it's just the truth, and we aren't good at everything. So if you know what you're good at and you take personal inventory, you can put something on to get better, but you can't be great at everything. And when I say great, I mean great at everything. You can be good at some things. You can be great at many things, but you can't be great at everything. And what I'm proposing is find out what you're good at, find out what you're great at, and find out where you suck and find somebody to do it. And that's just welcome to Texas. That's our Texas truth telling. It's not all good, but it's good enough until you find somebody to help you.
Okay, well, we are at the conclusion of the webinar, and I think we've got some useful information. Hopefully, those of you that are here enjoyed the session. I put my email in the chat box if you have any comments or suggestions about future webinars. What we're trying to do here is two things. One is to give you some insight into items that are important to project managers, and also let you know about the seminars at sea that's coming up in April, which is organized by the Project Management Institute Clear Lake Galveston chapter. And I left some information up there for you in connection with, if you wanted to find out more about it, you can talk to AJ Collier or Sherry at the email address shown below. These are interesting sessions, and it combined, we kind of call it like an edu vacation. You have 2 days of solid seminars, interactive workshops, and so on. You also have some time to enjoy a little bit of vacation time, including 1 day in Cozumel. So if that's something that you're interested in, send a note to Sherry at HoustonTravelZone.com. And also for comments regarding this webinar and future topics, suggestions, and things like that, send an email to salatispmp@msn.com. This is Frank Salatis, and I'd like to thank Kevin and Mark for joining us today for this session. Hope you enjoyed it. And again, have any questions, let us know. And have a great day. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Frank.